Sorry if I'm looking a little bit worse for wear today. I've just had my eye surgery recently and I am not allowed to take a shower for a few days. But I feel that makes me uniquely qualified to talk about today's topic: gacha games. Now, if you've been following me on Twitch the last week, you know that I have been spamming one game and one game only: Wuthering Waves. Why did I do that? Well, recently the developer of Wuthering Waves, Kuro Games, sponsored me to play their latest patch because they were so confident that I was going to enjoy it. So even though I only needed to stream the latest patch, I thought I'd go out of my way to play through and stream all of the content I had missed out up till then, just to see what Kuro has been cooking and if they were cooking in general. And now that I finished it, I can say, boy, were they. 3.1 is the best thing that Wuthering Waves has produced thus far and brought it to a level I wasn't expecting it to go. And I've been asked by Kuro themselves to share my honest thoughts and opinions about it. Now, for full disclosure, this is a sponsored video, so I understand that from your perspective, you have to take everything I say with a grain of salt. And that's totally understandable, so I'm going to try and do my best to be specific and give examples to back up what I'm saying, because this video won't be without criticism as well, as I wouldn't have agreed to it if I couldn't give my honest thoughts. So I realize that not all of you might be in tune with the space, and some of you might be wondering, what is this Wuthering Waves you are talking about? Well, Wuthering Waves is this anime-style gacha game, and it's really hard to talk about it without sounding like some generic YouTube ad read. But if you're in the gacha space, you've probably already heard about it, since it is one of the higher-end productions you can find in the industry currently. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not a gacha game content creator. I am an anime YouTuber. So I'm definitely coming into this with a much more casual outlook on things. I am definitely not as informed as some of the other creators out there right now, and even in the Wuthering Waves space, I haven't played every single character quest, I haven't done all of the exploration or seen everything the game has to offer. I have literally just played through all of the main story quests, some side quests, and played a little bit more of the game offline as well. And as a more casual player, basically catching up to almost a year's worth of content the last week, I can say that Wuthering Waves has certainly come a long way since it's launched. I think a lot of players has known that the game has had its ups and downs, and even myself playing through some of the early patches, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it kind of felt like a slog. But it was around the time, I think it was about patch 1.3, when they introduced Mount Firmament, that I could see shades of what the game could become. And I think since then, Kuro Games has done a great job of iterating on what they had built before and adding just a little bit more every time. Renacita was a step up from Mount Firmament, and even through that arc, I felt like the overall production values, the presentation, just the amount of love and care they put into it really felt evident. It's really been a treat to see how it's evolved over the years, and especially after playing the entire game patch by patch, back to back, I could see the evolution happen really quickly, and now I think it's safe to say that the game is in the best state it's ever been in right now. And I think one thing that really makes Wuthering Waves stand out from other gacha games, and one thing that I can really see the improvement happen right in front of me, is the care and attention to its presentation. Obviously, one of the very notable things are its cutscenes. It has done an amazing job at being able to set big bombastic set pieces and truly deliver on hype and exciting moments, and that was one thing that it always did consistently, especially during the 2.x patches. But what actually truly impressed me is how they went about handling other scenes outside of just the big action scenes, like dialogue scenes, for example. You know, all too often, especially in video game storytelling, I'm very used to a simplistic style of storytelling, especially if it's just some kind of like character scene or dialogue scene. And what really surprised me was how dynamic some of these dialogue scenes were in Wuthering Waves. During the later patches, the camera isn't just static, cutting between two talking heads. Characters don't just recite their lines. There's camera work, there's character acting, there's movements. You can see the subtle emotions on their faces when they say a certain line sometimes. For me, the big noticeable jump was from about patch 2.8 onwards, where suddenly I could see a lot of thought being put into stuff like shot composition, framing, lighting, overall direction. And it wasn't even for one of the climactic scenes, it was just this really intimate dialogue between two of the characters. And it honestly surprised me, because what this allows is an extra layer of depth to the storytelling, because you are no longer just listening to the dialogue to grasp a character's emotions. You are actively watching their expressions, you're seeing their actions. It is no longer just a glorified visual novel. This is something more in line you'd see from a regular TV anime. Hell, I'd argue that a lot of TV anime aren't even as dynamic as some of the scenes you see in Wuthering Waves. And this level of quality only increases in patch 3.1 and 3.0. And you know what? On the topic of production values, I have got to talk about the music, because if there was one thing that I kept getting blown away by and kept getting surprised by, and you can see this on my reaction on my streams, it was how much incredible music this game contains. Like, every time you load up a new patch, there'd be like 2 or 3 incredible insert songs of like all different kind of genres. Some of them you only get to hear once, and I'm like, how much music do you have in the backlog, Kuro? God damn! I think one of the best examples of this is something I can't even show you guys, because it didn't happen on stream. It happened when I was playing off stream, because yes, I did enjoy this enough to continue playing it of my own volition. So I'm just doing this random side quest from one of the older patches, and it brings me to this area, which is a lake underneath some shooting stars. And I'm here just casually exploring it, and then I get hit with this beautiful track that sounds like it could have come from Made in Abyss or something. And it caught me so off guard that I just had to drop everything and just appreciate the moment for what it was for a second, because it was such a tranquil scene. And then after it hit me, I could not believe that this was a moment for a completely optional area. I could have completely missed this moment if I didn't go out my way to do this quest. And it just shows how many amazing tracks and amazing moments that might not even be on the main story quests that Kuro have put into this game. Now, I know this is a game, and normally when people will talk about games, people like to mention the gameplay. And if you have seen my gameplay of this game on my streams, you'd probably know, probably not the most qualified person to talk about this, because what I want to focus on, and I'm pretty sure the reason Kuro brought me on, was to focus on the story. And everything I talked about before is fantastic dressing, but unless the meat of the story under that is good, then it all falls apart. And I would say that for the most part, the story of Wuthering Waves was enjoyable. For the majority of my playthrough, what I found it delivered, and consistently delivered, was great popcorn fun with a little bit of a, let's be real, harem angle, which isn't going to speak to everyone, but if you know the types of anime that I watch and consume, was right up my alley. The way I approached it was with a similar mindset to watching a high-budget, well-produced power fantasy show, and a lot of this was down to how the story would play out in every patch. For the most part, here's how it goes. You start a new story arc, you get introduced to a new character. It's probably gonna be a girl. You find out a little bit about their backstory and what problems they're going through, and then in comes Rover, the guy, the GOAT himself, who steps in and helps them to solve whatever issues they were going through. They end their character arc, we have a big bombastic set piece, and then Rover and them become friends. Afterwards, friends. And yeah, I definitely understand during my playthrough why the fan base lovingly calls it Gathering Wives. This isn't to say that I thought it was on the same level as some brain-dead isekai or anything, because there are a lot of stories that have heart and hit a lot of emotional beats, but it was hard to see it as anything more or substantial, because every patch we'd reset and recycle through the same formula, and you know what? I was fine with that. It felt like it knew exactly what it wanted to be, the audience it was trying to hit, and for what it was just a lot of fun. That is, until 3.1. This patch showcased a story that had a level of emotional depth that maybe the game had shown shades of before, but never fully realized as well as it did here. It really took the characters to places I wasn't expecting and explored themes and ideas they hadn't done before or I ever thought Wuthering Waves was going to explore. And it's almost impossible to talk about why the story of this patch hit so hard without just straight up spoiling some of the big reveals of what happens in this story arc. So you have been warned, I am going to talk about spoilers. Okay? So, Rover has an adopted daughter. The big twist is the new character, Imeth, is not just another wife, she is your adopted daughter. And damn, when that moment hit, I felt truly bad about some of the comments I'd said about Imeth when I first saw her. Because based on Wuthering Waves' track record, when she first got introduced in the previous patch, I think I said to myself, there we go, a new wife to add to the collection. And about halfway through the patch, I was like, oh god, what did I say about my baby? But after the shock of it all wore off, I thought it was such a genius move because it allowed us to see sides of the characters that we had never seen before and could never have explored before. By the simple fact of her not just being another possible wife character or a friend character, you were able to showcase a new dynamic between Rover and this new character. You know, it's because of this dynamic that we really get to see a vulnerability in Rover that we never have seen before. I said this before on stream, but I really resonated with Imeth's character arc, and there was this moment where okay, so I've tried to record this next part multiple times, but I haven't been able to convey it as well as when all the emotions were still raw when I first said it on stream, so I'm just going to play that clip. I think actually the most emotional I got was when they were just having a conversation together, and it was a conversation where Imeth, as an adult, told Rover that she understood how hard he was working and, you know, he had to go save the world and everything like that. And she understood that. I got a flashback of a conversation I had with my dad. He apologized to me. And he apologized because he was thinking back to this one memory where I really, really wanted to play with him. I didn't want him to leave to go to work. And he kind of had to like brush me off because he had to go to work, and he said that moment has like haunted him forever. Like, I told him straight up, Dad, I do not even remember this moment. I'm sure when I was a kid I was really sad, really upset about it because I just wanted to be with my dad, but as I've grown older I see and I saw even as a kid how hard you worked and how hard you had to like push yourself to provide for the family. And I think seeing Imeth sacrifice so much for her own parent just reminded me how much I would do for my own parents as well, just to make them feel how grateful I am for everything they've done for me. And even if I could just pay back a fraction of their lives and the hard work they put to give me the opportunities that I had, just, whew, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. And this level of emotional storytelling just wasn't something I thought Wuthering Waves could produce, because that wasn't the only big and interesting reveal to happen in this patch, because we finally get to find out a little bit more about Rover's past as well. So it turns out that Rover is essentially an immigrant from another world. He was someone who was sent here from a mission, but also someone who really longs and misses home. Someone who wants to go back to their birthplace, but is unable to because they don't have enough power or influence to do so. And guess what, guys? Surprise, surprise. The theme of longing for home was something that hit really close to me as someone who has made a short film exploring that exact theme. But I think the most interesting thing about this reveal is how much it humanizes Rover. Before this, we saw Rover as this all-powerful person, the guy who has sentinels as pets, the founder of the Black Shores who guided humanity in the past. Rover was the guy, or girl, but now we see that he is just a guy sent on a mission far away who really misses home but doesn't have the power or standing to do so. And for the first time, it made me really excited to see where this character could go in the future. Which brings me to what I'm hoping the game does, because as a self-contained story, I don't have many criticisms of 3.1 because it was a really tight, well-told story overall. But instead, it has changed the way I view it, for better and for worse, because from a storytelling perspective, this has really upped the ante. In my mind now, this has become more than just some pseudo-harem power fantasy story, and as such, my expectations for the storytelling have also gone up. And I think for the quality to maintain at the new bar that this patch has set in terms of storytelling, there are two main things that I'm really hoping will happen in the future. For characters to change, and for consequences to stick. What do I mean by that? Do I mean that I think Imeth should remain a potato and have Rover live with that? Well, I think that would be a very interesting and ballsy place to take the story, but I don't think that's gonna happen. What I mean is that I hope the events of this patch spark the beginning of some kind of change within Rover as a character, because like any great story, characters need to develop. The biggest weakness for Wuthering Waves right now, and a lot of games in the gacha space for that matter, is that we have gotten so used to jumping from one character story to another, because that is just part of the gacha ecosystem. There's always a new banner to sell, a new shiny wife to collect, but Wuthering Waves especially was one of the biggest offenders of this, because it always felt like no matter what big developments happened in a certain patch, lore-wise it might have some implications, but it would never seemingly have any long-lasting impact on the characters before moving on to the next. I think a great example of this is what happened in patch 2.5 with Frolova's story. This was the patch where for the first time we get to see someone actually challenge Rover and put him in a morally questionable position. A patch where he did not get the good ending. It was a patch that broke the pre-existing formula the game had set up before then and really had the potential to have some long-lasting implications on Rover as a character. But then he kind of just gets over it within like 5 minutes, and in the very next patch he goes back to being the same badass Giga Chad saving the day like he always was. And the events from the previous patch are barely a speck on his mind or his conscience. Frolova who? Never heard of her. And I sincerely hope that this doesn't happen again this time. Imeth isn't just another potential wife or another friend from your past. She is your daughter, and with that comes responsibility. And with everything that's set up, what I would hate to see is all of the issues and all of the conflicts to be solved, and that Rover would go back and default back to the same guy he always was, which would be a massive shame in my mind, because this is the patch that for the first time I actually saw Rover as a character and not just a conduit for the player. Like, if we do end up saving Imeth, which I assume we will, is there going to be some kind of sacrifice? Is there going to be a choice that Rover makes that is going to live with him, that will stick with him till future arcs? Is there anything that will happen within the next few patches that will change the way I view him as a person, as an actual character? By giving his actions consequences, it makes the things he does have meaning. It adds stakes to the choices he makes, and it makes him an actual character, and an interesting one as well. This is what I think needs to happen for me to see this as not just good for a gacha game, but an amazing narrative experience that can be compared to some of the great traditional games, movies, or anime. As a community, gacha is often judged by its patches. A game is only as hyped up as its previous patches. Every patch needs a narrative climax, a character moment in it, and I think what we sacrifice with that is setup time for a real payoff. It's long-running character arcs, because when every patch you are introducing, showing the backstory, and paying off a certain character, there is no time to build up towards the bigger picture. But right now, Wuthering Waves is poised in this very interesting situation where they've put the narrative pieces into place that could really drive change for the characters within it. But as it stands right now, the story presented in 3.1 is definitely peak Wuthering Waves, but I would hazard to call it peak just yet, because that would imply that it couldn't potentially get better. And I don't don't see it that way anymore. Right now though, I'm just really excited about where this game could go in the future and where the story could possibly go, because there is so much potential here. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves even more in the future. And yeah, that's it. That's my opinion on Wuthering Waves. I really hope Kuro approves this video. Alright, that's enough serious talk. Time to pull for some more wives.